Hello, folks, and welcome to our webinar today on business continuity, how to leverage technology through crisis. This presentation is brought to you in partnership with Alaska Safety Alliance and Arctic IT. On our webinar today are Dave Bailey and Andre Gonzalez from Arctic IT and Mandy Blue from Alaska Safety Alliance. Mandy, would you like to say a few words to the group?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to learn more about business continuity. The Alaska Safety Alliance is excited to work with Arctic IT to bring you a series of learning opportunities over the next few weeks. The information that will be shared during this webinar series is especially critical during this time of unique challenges, which we find ourselves facing both personally and professionally. So for ASA, or Alaska Safety Alliance, switching gears to working from home during a worldwide pandemic certainly brought some issues to light and some challenges. So we are thankful that we are working with Arctic IT today, and we hope that you find this webinar to be well invested in your business and organization and what it could potentially bring to you moving forward during this time. That's all I have to say. Thanks for joining us today.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Andre, who takes care of both new and existing clients in our Anchorage office. Go ahead, Andre.
Thank you, Mandy and Joanne. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andre Gonzalez, and I serve as the account executive for the Alaska market. I'm located at our headquarters in Anchorage, Alaska. And I've worked on facilitating discussions regarding technology for Alaska Safety Alliance for over 2 years now, and I've been witness to their incredible growth over that time. So with the level of increased services that they now offer, there were many technology decisions and implementations that I'm glad that they partnered with us to make many of those. So Arctic IT's vision and direction has always been cloud technologies and security as our guiding light. And I'd like to introduce the gentleman that's been steering our organization with that forward-thinking momentum, our president and CEO, Dave Bailey.
Hello. Well, with that, we'll get started. I appreciate the intro and glad to participate. So we'll just jump right in. I think it's important to note that most of the conversations that we've all participated in over the past few months have begun with the concept of this term precedence. A lot of us assume we know what that means, but it is actually an evolving term. You look at the risk that most of us had our business continuity planned around 6 months ago. And that would have been, especially in the Alaska market, an earthquake. Something that there's just no way you knew it was coming. It was impossible to prepare for. Some volcano blows up and causes air traffic control to shut down all flights in and out of Alaska. That'd be pretty difficult to deal with. And then you look at precedence on business as you know it and life as you know it being completely put to a stop and on hold globally, not just locally, globally. No one's business continuity plan, no one's contingency plan really had precedence for something of that scale, nor were we designed or did we put operations in place to have that, right? So every conversation started with unprecedented. Well, now we have precedent. We have a different way of doing things. We have a different expectation of what it takes to keep business going in the eyes of this global pandemic and in some cases even worse outside of the aspect of human life, what it does to business and being able to stay safe. Safe at the same time has also had a little bit different of a definition associated with it. We have our health, we have the space we're in, we have the occupational safety that is required from my workspace and the kind of work that I'm doing, as you can imagine, right? And most of the time when we talk about risk in that respect to safety, We look at workers' compensation. We look at the work conditions that we're in. We're IT guys and girls, so most of the time we're at a computer in an office, a server room, but we travel, we move through client headquarters. But when we look at our parent organization, its subsidiaries, and just the Alaska market in and of itself, we have some pretty rough conditions that we work in. Even our IT folks have to make it through the driveway over at New Sagaya to get lunch, right? Safety is a whole different ballgame when you get into Alaska. But it's always been about physical aspects of safety and that type of stuff. But when we get into cybersecurity, and we think about the safety of our employee, the safety of our customer, the safety of our customer's data that we're responsible to be stewards of if they do business with us, doesn't matter what kind of business you are, whether you're using credit cards to process transactions or they're shopping with you remotely because of the new way we work. Both business continuity and safety and the premise in which we use to establish those things has vastly changed in our world. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how cloud strategy has taken a very different turn with respect to that conversation we just had, right? We all knew about the cloud. We have an idea of what it was supposed to mean to our business and how we were supposed to maybe take advantage of it in some aspect, whether it was from a consumer on my phone or whether it was iCloud or the Google Cloud, Microsoft Cloud, right? But business continuity and employee safety, data safety, cybersecurity in general, and how it relates to the cloud now has a little bit different of a twist. So we want to touch on how business continuity and the cloud and those aspects of your business are something you start to need to think about differently, and how we can help you along that process if you have questions, and how the Alaska Safety Alliance can also provide some insight there. So we'll talk about what that modern workplace means. Now, we were using the term modern workplace, I don't know, about a year ago, and I think most people, when Microsoft started marketing to the modern workplace, it was just that, it was marketing. And all of a sudden, a few months ago, we found ourselves literally in a new modern workplace. Not just physically where we sat to do our jobs, but the way we had to interact with our customers and our clients and our community and engage with them. It became the new normal, as you heard the press call it. So that modern workplace has evolved as well. So is legacy technology holding you back? And typically, we go into businesses and assess their use of different technology, the business applications that they need to make them run, whether it was an accounting system, a customer relationship management system, a service delivery or repair ticket type system, everything from fish tickets to oil field services, work tickets, you name it. These systems are typically grown in the industry in which they were spawned, and a lot of them are what we call siloed. So we might have employee, vendor, and customer data in several different systems, or duplicates of that same information that needs to be rekeyed, and really a lot of inefficiencies. So business application software has always had a capability to streamline some of that stuff. But then when you start getting into security and accessibility and a distributed workforce, it compounded where technology might be holding an organization back. And it's not like they got to prepare for it. A lot of the companies that we work with, they weren't prepared to just go to an all remote workforce, right? So now we know that we have the precedent. We know what it took. We might still have some challenges now that things are starting to pink back up and get back to those offices. But how can we be more prepared for it in the fall, next year, 2 years from now, when something similar like this is pressed upon us, because that's how we're required to react because the precedent's been set. So the cloud is not a destination, it's a capability. And that really is a different way for a lot of small to medium-sized business as well as enterprise. This isn't just something that applies to the enterprise. most people look at a cloud as a place to put things, right? I'm going to put this in the cloud. So it's a destination for something. But it does a lot more than that. It gives you additional capability and scalability that you typically can't afford or fund yourself in an on-premise environment. And then it also far extends your ability to work remotely with a remote workforce and do business with your customers in a different capacity as well. There's a couple different types of cloud. I think it's important, depending on the acumen of the audience that we have today, to define this. You might have heard these terms, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Public cloud is what you and I would traditionally call something like an Office 365. I have a software as a service subscription, SaaS, SaaS subscription. I'm going to pay a monthly fee for the number of users I have to access all the latest and greatest stuff from Microsoft, like Office 365, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, something to that effect. I might have my email hosted up there as well, which is we'll talk a little bit more about. I might have Pandora. I might have SiriusXM that I listen to for music. That as well is just a public cloud service where I have a username, password, an app on my device. I'm consuming that service, right? And then we have private cloud. Depending on the size of our operations, some of us actually switched to a private cloud model over the last few months where I have business applications local that I'm hosting. I have remote users, whether they're home coming through the internet and back down into my environment via VPN, but I'm hosting technology centrally so that I can distribute it to a multi-location or remote user base. That's my private cloud, right? And you might have really good business reasons for hosting a private cloud. For example, an oil rig up on the slope, believe it or not, has its own private cloud because all the technology it needs to run autonomously of any connectivity to anything around it, which there is none, runs in that little cloud, and it's served up to all the different components of that rig that need to operate, right? A fishing vessel, a cruise ship, any of those types of vehicles are going to have what you and I would consider their own little private cloud to offer technology out to its users. Most businesses we work with have a hybrid approach to public cloud and private cloud, where they have some technology they serve up, they subscribe to some software as a service, and then you could refer to that as hybrid cloud. But then we also say, okay, we do a lot of work with Microsoft, so most of our technology is in the Microsoft cloud, but we also have some of our resources in Amazon Web Services or AWS. Some of our clients use some of Google's cloud services. Right? So, and then all of us as consumers, if we have an iPhone, we're using Apple's cloud. Right? So you have what you call as a hybrid cloud. Security through all that, the user identity, the information and data that passes between those environments. You might think that moving something to the cloud drastically simplifies your infrastructure, and physically it does. You don't have any more moving parts here, but you still have to secure all that information. So that's really what we call a hybrid cloud. That's what a lot of small and medium sized and enterprise business have immediately shifted to. They got a little bit of everything. We'll dive into that in a little bit more detail. So when we consider on-premise solutions or cloud solutions, a lot of folks really don't understand what the key aspects of determining, is this more cost effective, and is that the only thing I should consider? Cloud is not only about price. Now, arguably, in most cases, I can provide to you an example and a very solid, convincing argument that the cloud is definitely going to cost you less money when you consider everything that's involved. Is it easier and less expensive to set up and move something into the cloud? Yes, it is. The cloud can scale to your needs. So if I had a tremendous amount of business before the COVID-19 situation running against my cloud operations, say I had an e-commerce website where people were shopping with me, or the stuff they were buying they needed for their on-premise operations, right? Maybe medical supplies, different types of businesses. Well, depending on how that traffic hit, based upon this continuity plan I had in the cloud, I can dial up the amount of compute resources and storage that I need, or I can dial it down because my demand has shrunk. In an on-premise world, I have to buy new hardware and storage with enough capacity to grow. So years ago, when we would sell you infrastructure to put into your business, we would say, well, if you have 200 gigs of data you're maintaining now, you can't just buy 200 gigs of storage in your new server. You got to at least double or triple that, so this is going to last you for 3 to 4 years and give you enough runway to expand. You take that same virtual server now and put it in the cloud, you could stand it up with just the 200 gigs of storage that you need and tell it that you want it to grow automatically as your needs increase and only pay for what you need. Not a Liberty Mutual commercial, in case you guys see those up there. Yeah, I'm in New York and we get those all the time. Pay for what you need. So that's one of the cool things about the cloud is you can dial it up or dial it back depending on what your requirements are in your business. Where we see a lot of advantage in Alaska businesses for continuity is seasonality. So if you're in the cruise ship industry and you have a tourism industry and you have that May to September, boom, and then there's not much after that. Being able to put all those resources or as many as you can in the cloud and dial them up for your peak and dial them down for your valley, hugely valuable to a business that's seasonal. Low maintenance, fault tolerance, and geo-redundant. We did talk earlier about some potential to say, well, maybe we have an earthquake or some type of event where I have my data center or where I have my resources is compromised. Well, if I was ever worried about that, one of the nice things about the cloud is most services offer you the ability to have what's called geo-redundant cloud services. So in Arctic IT, for example, our headquarters, as Andre told you, was up there in Anchorage, Alaska. We have office in Seattle, Texas, DC. We have different time zones, different regions. Even the cloud service provider will guarantee you what's called a service level agreement of SLA, service level agreement of maybe it's 99.99% uptime. And if you take that and apply that percentage to the number of hours in a year, you could, within contract terms, be down for several hours with your cloud service. One of the cool things is that most of these technologies are available regionally and geo-redundant, so you should have no downtime. And that's how a cloud provider can guarantee you 99.9% uptime, which is pretty impressive SLA. And most of them adhere to that standard. And then you have operational failure that occurs if you don't have your email hosted, for example, in the cloud, and you're requiring your IT folks to maintain that application server for email. When email server goes down or the service, everybody knows that that's a really bad day. Most folks in an organization don't stop by the IT guy's desk just to say, "What's up, Mike? Just wanted to let you know that everything's working good with my computer today and everything's awesome." That's very rare. We would appreciate it. I just want to tell you that if you did come by just to say hello and let us know everything was working great, we would actually appreciate that. But usually you stop by IT or you have a problem when nothing's working or something that you expect to work is not. The cloud eliminates a lot of that type of system type failure because of the redundancy that is built into it. And then of course you have security at scale, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. I mentioned software as a service earlier. That's one that I think most of us can wrap around. I'd be very surprised if everybody attending today didn't at least have some level of software as a service inside their life, whether it's personal on the consumer side or inside your business. You're using some type of software as a service. Believe it or not, your banking software, if you have an app on your phone, or your credit card software, if you have an app on your phone, that's the equivalent of leveraging software as a service and a combination of a mobile app, right? You talked about Office 365 or something like we specialize in on a business application side called Dynamics 365. It's a CRM and ERP foundation that we work with. Then there's platform as a service. Platform as a service is something like I mentioned earlier. Microsoft has Azure, AWS has their platform where you're going to take things like database, web application services, different types of artificial intelligence services, where I can say I want to take a business workload and use this platform as a service to run as a backbone because I need the compute and storage to be more real time, and I don't want to have to wait for that stuff on premise or be worried about it not being available. Platform as a service is a big component of when you hear people saying, I've migrated a workload to the cloud, that's pretty common. An example of platform as a service would be you might have a database application that you run today where it's running, say, maybe Microsoft SQL Server, and then there's an application server that runs over that, right? If you want to actually take that and move that to the cloud, it actually becomes, in many cases, one virtual machine because you're gonna provision a virtual server in the cloud. You're gonna tell it how much space you want, what kind of performance you want out of it. You want SQL Server already running on it with the server operating system, and the number of people that you're going to have access, it doesn't really come into the equation because you're buying the cloud service, you're setting it up for what you need, and as long as you provide security to that application service, the licensing that you have is typically going to be covered if you have an Office 365 SKU and the security that goes around that. So now at that point, and we're going to talk about this a little bit too, is you don't have the server infrastructure, the hardware, the backup, the battery backup, and all that stuff that you needed on premise now. You don't have the server licensing, which is a capital expense. You don't have the database licensing, which is a capital expense. And you don't have to babysit and maintain a piece of hardware any longer that requires that nurturing, and you're going to have to replace in 3 to 4 years anyway. So platform as a service is a big jump where maybe you can't use SaaS, you have something that's really core to your business, but you can at least run it in some server infrastructure to get rid of that on-premise workload. And then there's infrastructure as a service where you're actually just replacing net server for server inside your on-premise environment up there in the cloud. And there are different business reasons that people will do that depending on the workload. Most of the time in the small to medium sized space, because of the scalability, you're going to stick with software as a service and platform as a service. Every once in a while, we get into some infrastructure in the service for smaller size organizations. But typically, that's going to be an enterprise workload because you really need the infrastructure dedicated to your use. One of the key differences between platform and infrastructure as a service is when you move to infrastructure as a service, you're able to dedicate more of the resources to just your use, where in platform as a service, you're pooling resources and it's less expensive. Right? So there's a couple different capacities. Having someone like an Arctic IT or an IT partner that you work with in the community help you make that decision is what our expertise is. And if you have an IT professional that works inside your company, well, they've been making those decisions for you in your on-premise infrastructure. It's a little different in the cloud. We typically would engage with them to help make that decision. So we talked a little bit about on-premise and cloud, no server licensing, no software licensing down there on the hardware. Always up to date. So the operating system, if you're consuming something as a software as a service, you don't have to worry about operating system compatibility with your software as a service. You just have to worry about having an internet connection. So anywhere, anytime, any device. And the security of all of that system is baked into that identity and authentication as well. So you're flattening some expense there. Couldn't do an Arctic IT presentation without an iceberg. As most of us in Alaska know, that's the 89%, 11%. Any iceberg you're looking at, if you didn't know this in the ocean, you only see about 11% of the iceberg. 89% of it is below the surface. Here, the point in showing you this is that when you have on-premise costs, all of the ongoing costs you see listed on this one side You are required to do all of that to keep that investment together. And that's all what we consider capital expense, because it requires dollars to buy the physical device infrastructure and labor you need to do all of this. You move to a subscription model that changes the expense quite drastically, and it moves it from what you traditionally call capital expense to operating expense. And if you think about the situation that we find ourselves in now with a remote workforce and being able to scale, it became almost all an operating expense if you were in the cloud. If you had a lot of on-premise resources that you simply couldn't address or maintain because you didn't have access to them, that became pretty challenging. So there's other expenses that get removed by placing those resources up into the cloud that you don't have to worry about in the traditional, what we'll call brick and mortar type deployment of hardware. Now, as we start talking about the different aspects of moving a workload to the cloud, it can be kind of daunting. If there's a lot of stuff that you have and your infrastructure is old and you haven't kept up with it, whether you are looking at the precedent that you now have with the situation we just faced, or just general business continuity and moving to the cloud as a best practice, you don't have to boil the ocean. There is a practical way to do it. One of the key aspects of this is we apply a 9-step process, right? 9 steps. So we're going to say, okay, let's look at your current footprint. What are the servers, virtual servers, networks, applications that you use? Look at the dependencies they have and any kind of common denominators, and then start to put together, okay, well, here's some candidates that you and I would consider maybe low-hanging fruit to move up to the cloud. Low-hanging fruit means a little bit of effort, high impact, low cost. So a little bit of effort, high impact on the business, low cost, right? That would be low-hanging fruit. And then there might be some more complicated aspects. We'd evaluate whether or not those would be candidates, as we discussed, for infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Depending on the complexity of the operational maturity of your business, you could have a little bit of each. Develop that migration strategy and plan. Prepare an environment, that's provisioning. Okay, let's set some of this stuff up. Figure out what data has to be moved from your on-premise environment and move it up into that newly prepared cloud environment as a test, leaving yourself some contingency so that if you had to regress back to the ground or you couldn't quite make the move because of something else that happened in your business, you don't just flip a switch and move and not be 100% sure that it's going to work right. So there's a process to migrate that workload. And that takes out some of the fear and uncertainty that you would have moving a workload that you depended upon to the cloud. And then once everything is good and we've tested that out, we're going to make that production move. We shut down that on-premise system, but we leave it intact, right? We leave it intact just as a backup plan, where this is about contingency and continuity, right? We move to production, we run for a while, we make sure that's backed up, the cloud assets are all secure, we have access to it, we document it, and then we put that into our new maintenance life cycle for our cloud resource. And after we get maybe 60 to 90 days outside of successful operation up there, then you have to make sure you come back into that on-premise resource that you moved, shut that down, make sure the data that was there, in case it's confidential or it's critical that doesn't get out, you want to make sure that that has now been what we call a decommissioned resource. And that might include something like having the hardware destroyed by a certified contractor, where they come, they take the hardware, they grind up the hard drives and shred it up. That way it can't ever be compromised. That's one step that a lot of people forget when they move a workload or deprecate old servers. No stones, but I'm sure some of you on this call today have a closet somewhere in your business or even at your home with some old computers or old laptops or old servers, workstations, monitors, whatever they are. They have to be disposed of properly, because you never know what kind of data is on, right? Never know. All right, so those are the 9 steps we look at. Now, business continuity is streamlined when you move to the cloud, because let's face it, we're on the cloud. We already have the ability to work anywhere, anytime, on pretty much any device. Now, would I like to use my accounting application all day on my mobile phone? No, I would not. I would go blind, right? That would not be easy for me to work with. But laptop, being able to be somewhere that has another computer and being able to securely log in with multi-factor authentication on a mobile device, right? You can work anywhere. This individual seems to suggest that you can pretend to be in a suit while you have your shorts on at the beach on a lounge chair, which I would prefer. But agility and ability and flexibility are the things that we look at when we talk about the cloud. We don't have to change the way we work regardless of the impact we have on our business. Now, of course, I would have to point out that that would be dependent on a connection to the cloud. This is a cell connection to the cloud, a cell tower connection to the cloud, versus a Wi-Fi connection or a landline connection plugged into my device from my home network, right? So internet connectivity is pretty important. But you'd need that in a remote work situation if you had to get into your on-premise resources or the cloud either way. Keep in mind that when you move to the cloud, it knocks out half of that internet traffic and the round trips that you'd have to take if you had to log into a VPN through the internet, using the resources in that on-premise environment, in your on-premise infrastructure, returning that information back up and down, right? Using the cloud takes out a good amount of that communication and workload and actually thins out and improves the experience for your end user in those business applications because they're not dependent on such a thick amount of traffic to go back and forth in that scenario. Okay? One of the clients we have that's down here in the lower 48, they're a large tribal organization, Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures in Minnesota. Very diversified organization, casinos, golf course, hotels, for-profit businesses, manufacturing businesses, you name it. But they were so diversified and they were doing so much traveling between sites to take care of their infrastructure. Years ago, they asked us, hey, how can we do this better? Because we can't keep up with it anymore with the growth we've had. Well, they moved to not only a lot of business applications up in the cloud, but we also manage their computers from Azure, where we take care of managing their endpoints. So their desktop updates, so Windows updates for the application, Office application updates, security audits, monitoring, everything that we do from them is in a cloud down perspective. And it flattened their entire requirement to touch every single machine because we do it all remotely. So they have remote managed services through Arctic IT, and they're able to focus on the use of those business applications and the strategy inside their business versus that day-to-day grind inside that, that workstation type environment, that brick and mortar approach. One of the other components that we deal with, and you heard me mention this earlier, Dynamics 365, that's an example of a business application. So business applications have changed quite a bit and they continue to evolve pretty fast. And that's actually one of the key aspects is that adding new features and functionality into a cloud-based application because you're just coming from a browser to use the software is very different than how most of us came up in the technology world where the software had to be installed on my computer for me to use it. The speed in which you can absorb change and add features and functions. If any of us are in Office 365 and you're using Teams, just think about how much Teams, the application itself, amongst this, again, I'm going to say unprecedented amount of adoption in the past several months, think about how much they've added to the application in just this short time based on demand, based on it being a cloud service, and based on it being able to be consumed in any browser on any device at any time. So the speed in which you're able to evolve your business also can start to mirror the way that application starts to take advantage of new trends and technology in the market. So Azure as a cloud platform is part of Dynamics. That's where your data, the different operations, life cycles as far as how your software gets built and used and you have a tremendous amount of storage capability that you're not going to use up. Matter of fact, I challenge you with that, right? So the cloud provides you an unbelievable amount of scalability on that Azure platform to use the business applications. You heard me talk earlier about, okay, well, we have this common data that we're trying to eliminate silos, right? If I have a vendor record, a customer, or an employee in several different databases, for example, oil field services, they got a safety database, they got a payroll database, they have a time entry database because a person has to put their time in against a job, right? They really have an employee record and 3 or 4, maybe 5 different systems when we step in, usually to assist. A common data model says, I'm going to create one employee record and feed it to the rest of those systems and maintain it in one place so that I have one version of the truth. Dynamics and Power Apps, which is a new feature from Microsoft, allows us to do that type of stuff. You'll also hear it called Power Automate, which is a workflow tool. So integration, a common data platform also allows us to have better security. Securing multiple data sources with, risky information like employee master records or vendor or customer, that becomes a bigger challenge for your IT organization. So they're trying to limit the attack surface from a cybersecurity point of view and minimize the number of instances that same data exists. So this should always be a goal, no matter what size company you are. Minimize the amount of technology systems you need to still achieve the mission you have, not just keep adding technology for technology's sake. It's easy to say, usually comes with price tags, of course, but remember, the cloud should be a way for you to operationally flatten expense, make it more dependable, and shrink your cybersecurity risk as a matter of safety, not just in current terms, but all the time. So collaboration platform, when we look at Microsoft 365, that's the new brand, by the way. You probably just started saying Office 365, and like anything else at Microsoft, right, as we get used to calling it something, they change the name, right? So it's now called Microsoft 365. The difference, however, is that includes, if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, that includes the desktop operating system for Windows Professional and the updates that it might require. Usually if you buy a laptop, let's say from HP, it comes with the operating system on it. If you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, you're now going to get all the updates for that through that Microsoft 365 subscription, in addition to all the Office applications that you'd expect. It includes OneDrive and Teams and everything else. And then we call that it's Microsoft 365 Business Premium is that SKU. And then there's one for the enterprise, which would be Microsoft 365 for enterprise. And that actually includes the Windows Enterprise operating system, which has a bunch of other features in it that are around advanced threat protection, Windows Defender on the workstation for encryption, and a couple other different things. So when we talk about Dynamics, it's real easy to throw out there, yeah, it's a business application, but it is now what they consider a platform. Dynamics 365 is a platform. I think it's important to note with our discussion of the cloud today that we look at Microsoft as 3 different clouds inside one vendor. Azure is that platform as a service where we're going to move servers from our on-premise up into Azure and take care of some of those things as what we call platform or infrastructure as a service. Then we have Microsoft 365, which is the operating system and the office productivity tools that we've come to use. And then that third cloud in Microsoft's vendor profile would be Dynamics 365, and those are all the business applications. Everything from project service, field service, sales, accounting and finance, supply chain management, customer relationship management, you name it, marketing. So all of those now are inside one wheelhouse, if you will, thus the wheel logo there. And customers are able to pick which ones they need based upon the number of users, And beyond that, there are different levels of users. You might have a power user, which is in the back office cranking away on that application all day long, like a full accounting user or a supply chain person. And maybe you just have an employee user that just needs to come in and put in an expense report or a purchase requisition. So different levels of licensing based upon how much the user is going to consume. Right? And then all of this is embedded inside their business analytics. You've probably heard, if not from a commercial, maybe in some level of your business, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation. I mean, all of these things, if you talked about this 20 years ago, it was because you saw it in a movie. Every single person on the call today is a subject within multiple artificial intelligence capabilities, machine learning capabilities, and robotic process automation already. You just don't know it, right? Those technologies are being used to help market to you, suggest to you based upon your proximity to something as you drive by it on the old Seward Highway, that maybe you should stop in here because you haven't been there in 33 days, right? Depending on how much you allow your technology to integrate into your life, dictates how some of these business applications and capabilities affect you as an individual, but also in your customers and your business as we look to evolve our business applications and take advantage of what type of business continuity they can provide, not just because something catastrophic happens, but continuity in your business is very important. If you think about a restaurant, which I don't know about you all, but I can't wait to go sit in a restaurant and have a meal. Well, I haven't done it in quite a while, but I'm looking forward to it more than ever. But if you go back to a restaurant that you like my brother-in-law, he lives up there in Anchorage, and every time we go to Suite 100, he gets the same thing. He gets the ribs. They always have a cool menu there. They do lots of cool stuff, love the food there, but he gets the same thing no matter what because it's always the same. It's dependability, it's consistency. Business continuity has to be looked at from a consistency as well as an evolution of your, just think about it like a menu. You want to keep some things there that you do consistently all the time, but you also have to evolve as things change. Like I'm a restaurant, I can't see people in here, but I'm going to go to a pickup menu and I'm going to consolidate that on something I can do hot, fast, and fresh and keep consistent. Something as simple as you might think is just changing the menu up for pickup in a restaurant. Your technology stack has to also be that nimble as you look at keeping up with the challenges that tech has and the continuity and consistency that you have to maintain for your end users and employees and the customers that depend on you for that service, right? So that's just one thing, one analogy. I couldn't get out of a presentation without tying it to food. Andre knows that, sorry, man. So collaboration. If you're not using Teams, you should be. We use it quite extensively here at Arctic IT. We've been on Teams now for about 2 years. I'm not suggesting this to you because it's a Microsoft product and that's all we work with, although that might be true. Like right now we're using GoToWebinar to present to you because the webinar capabilities inside this and allowing to present and record and do all those other things far outweighs what Teams can do at this point from a meeting perspective on a webinar capacity. But on day-to-day operations, not just for in-person communication with video, chat, and phone, the collaboration on content with all your documents, all the stuff that you work with on a daily basis. You may have been familiar with something that was called SharePoint, right? Teams replaces that and embeds all of the meeting technology and chat inside your organization with it. So Teams is a very different way and a much more robust way to communicate at an enterprise level, regardless of what size business you are. And if you're not aware, Microsoft is offering 6-month free utilization of Teams to anybody that wants to sign up for it if they've never used it before. It's available on all your devices, no matter where you are. I have a Teams app on my phone. If I happen to be traveling or I'm in an airport in between calls, which also haven't had to do in quite a while, I can be right on a meeting with my team, right on my mobile device. I can see the content they're sharing. I can hear everything. And it really changes that level of engagement that you have inside that organization. If you haven't worked with teams, it allows you to basically be your entire communication platform in one place. So if I have to call one of my fellow workers, we're about 120 folks here scattered throughout the United States, right? I'm currently about 40 minutes outside of downtown Manhattan. That's where I live in New York. I can meet just like I am with you, share content. We can even edit documents at the same time collaboratively without issue all throughout the US, no matter what time zone we're in, all cloud-based, very valuable. We would not be able to operate our business without Microsoft Teams, and that's a fact. We could not do what we do today for our clients, whether it's federal government, state and local, commercial, Alaska, or anywhere else. We couldn't do it without this technology. Right, so we talked a little bit about these features that are all available inside those tools. Now let's talk about security. If I'm one user, I have one username, one profile. I have to authenticate to my technology. If I have multiple places to do that between on-premise and the cloud, not that that's impossible, but it does create more of an attack surface from a cyber risk point of view. Your IT professionals are doing everything they can to keep you secure and the information that you work with. But if they don't have the opportunity to shrink down how that's done and have some continuity between your business application, your desktop operating system, and your mobile device, it makes their job a lot harder. It's not always possible to get everything into a one vendor scenario from Microsoft. It is possible for small to medium-sized businesses to entertain that, but as you grow in complexity and your industry varies, this is not always reality. But identity and security management, as much as you can shrink that platform, it definitely makes you more secure, and it increases the safety of your employees, your business, and the data that you protect, as well as your customers. There are a couple different components to Microsoft's threat protection. I want to introduce those to you just so you have those top of mind. They're one of the only vendors that offer this level of security as part of the type of size business you are, the number of employees, and the price you pay. Arguably, you could say, well, the price you pay makes you more secure, so if I pay more, I'm more secure. It's not necessarily how it translates. That is how it appears on the surface, but that's not necessarily how it translates. The larger you are, the more number of users you are, typically you'll make more of an investment in security. For example, we're working with a local Alaska business right now. They have, let's say, 40 desktops across several locations in their business. They're going to move all of their resources to Office 365, Microsoft 365. They're going to have no on-premise infrastructure at all, no servers, none. So do they need to have device-level encryption embedded into their operating system and a bunch of server-level type stuff? Well, no. So they can actually spend less money and be more secure. As an example, that counters some of the impression you might get from paying more to be more secure. They're going to pay less at a lower price SKU inside Microsoft 365 because all their content's going to be up in the cloud with one identity source for all their users, and anything they pull down is going to be encrypted, and the applications on their desktop are all going to be encrypted as well. It's just part of the normal Office 365 stack. So if you don't understand this, you want to learn more about the safety aspect and security aspect of business continuity, so that cyber risk isn't the reason you're looking at business continuity, let alone a COVID-19 situation or some catastrophic geological event, right? The cyber risk is also what requires us to have continuity. Remember backups too, right? If all your backups are on-premise from your on-premise servers and something happens to that location, well, unless the backups were in your pocket, and you have the ability to stand up that infrastructure in your home and restore those backups, you really don't have business continuity. But if you took all those backups and shipped them into the cloud as encrypted backups, even if your on-premise environment got hit with things like ransomware or some type of command and control type situation where someone took over your network. And this happens a lot. It also gets to the backups there, and people have no way to recover. So business continuity from cyber risk is one of those key final points that we want to make sure you're here. At a minimum, you got anything out of today, take your backups and put them into the cloud in some encrypted type of storage. If you don't do that, you are exposing yourself tremendously on a level on which is almost impossible to recover, okay? So the modern workplace involves everything from employee engagement, customer engagement, security, collaboration, communication, being able to share no matter where we are in the workplace. You know, some of us right now, depending on where you are in Anchorage, are working, some of our staff are in the office, some of our staff at home, and we're alternating those schedules. At least that's what some of our folks are doing, right? Just to make sure we have some office presence, plus everybody was really eager to just get back to the office and do some work. Right, so if you have those kind of changing things, that's another example of you need this opportunity to really have that modern workplace so that it can shift and evolve, keep everybody productive and plugged in, and also not lose that engagement with your client base, right? Ultimately, save time, money, and resources with cloud technology and security at scale. Security at scale means that that cloud provider can spend a lot more money on security than you can locally on premise and have a lot more protection. Keep in mind, that cloud provider has their brand to protect. They have their brand to protect. As far as if someone breached their cloud and stole your information publicly, that would be tremendously detrimental to them. So they have a real big motivation to protect your content, but they also have a lot more dollars to do it. So you're going to get much deeper security on your cloud resources than you could ever possibly afford in your on-premise network environment. That's a fact. Okay. Take one last opportunity to remind you of the, in case any of you are old enough to know who Rube Goldberg was. We call this our Rube Goldberg model. If you don't know who that is, look it up. It's pretty funny. He used to make those mousetrap things, right? 9 steps to evaluate moving something to the cloud. And you would apply all 9 of these steps, by the way, regardless of how big the application was. Even if it was something small, like a time and attendance or a payroll application for a software as a service, you would still do all 9 of these steps. This would apply to something huge and something small. You can't skip any of the steps. You have to do all of them regardless of the size of the opportunity. If some of this resonated with you and you want to have a deeper conversation about it, one of the things we're helping our clients with is we'll do a 2-hour technical deep dive with our team into yours. All you have to do is reach out to us at connect@arctic-it.com. We'll tell you what you can move, what that low-hanging fruit might be if you want to get your feet wet with it. And if you had some challenges specific to a business app in these past several months that you just need to make a change, use that 2 hours to ask us how we would get that done. We're offering that to you. You might be able to do it yourself, but at least we've given you some level of community service to say, this is a good plan, this is a bad plan, let's help you stay safe and have some continuity in your operations, right? A couple other events that are coming up for us. We have a phishing awareness training. If you're not sure what phishing, this has nothing to do with salmon up there, right? Spelled differently. This is where people are sending emails into your organization trying to get information out that looks like it comes from somebody, and your users really aren't quite sure if they should respond. This is a huge value for you folks. This is one of the biggest safety issues that we stress in all of our client base. End user training and cybersecurity awareness is your #1 prevention to keeping your business safe and away from cyber threat. All the security in the world is not going to prevent that one person that every organization has that will click on anything, right? So you got to educate them, and if you're that person, I'm sorry, but you might know who that person is. Every organization has at least one person that will click on it. So try to attend this or have someone from your organization attend it. We're going to give you some tips and tricks. There's lots of even third-party tools to help test your users. Even in Arctic IT, we use a tool, a web service that actually sends automatic phishing messages that we can control. And if we have an employee that clicks on something, we don't tease them. We don't make it publicly aware that they did, but we use that as an educational opportunity to say, this was pretty crafty and we got you. And this is why you should look for this, and this is the mistake you made, so that we can strengthen that security awareness and behavior. Don't miss that opportunity. Cybersecurity for a new decade is more of a targeted approach to wrap around cybersecurity, and it would include security awareness. And then Cloud 101 is similar today, but it actually goes through the steps in more detail on how we move you. So if you're not familiar with how to make that move to cloud, we go through that in some more detail. Business leader, technical resource inside your company would do well for attending that. So with that, I'll open it up to some Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Dave. That was a fantastic presentation. Let's see, we have a question that just came in. How long does a cloud migration project typically take?
Well, I think the safe answer is your mileage may vary. If we take something that's small, a small workload, few users, that's going to be pretty quick. It's not so much about the technical aspect. If we're doing the migration for you, for example, well, that's what we do every day. We can do it pretty fast. You have to also take into account that if you're moving to a new application, you have some end user training. They have to absorb that new tech, and the pace of what else is going on in your business may affect how long that full migration takes. But if we're just simply taking a server that you have on premise and we're going to put it up virtually inside the cloud, doesn't take really any time at all, and the impact's real low. We actually, in that example, can use something called Azure Site Recovery, which behind the scenes starts backing up that server that you have on premise right now. And we actually just tell it to fail over and then kill the on-premise resource and make that the primary, and your end users didn't even know it happened. So impact and what else is going on in your business will affect the timeline. If it's a big business application and it has to be implemented and there's a lot of data to move, remember there's some testing and some training and then some live production that has to occur. So we've done large accounting system migrations that have taken 6 to 9 months. We've done small accounting migrations that have taken 30 days. But if it's just a small workload or you want to move your email server from on-premise to the cloud, usually inside of 30 days, you're wrapped up and done and everybody's real happy, and some of your users don't even know that it occurred. Any other questions?
Okay.
I'd also like to jump in with a little bit of a comment. I realize that these conversations are pretty commonplace for us at Arctic IT. We're having, these discussions with other clients all the time, and I don't want anybody to feel intimidated about reaching out to us and engaging us on that 2-hour conversation, because I know that to start off, we're just going to ask some simple questions, and then we'll start taking a deeper dive, maybe through email, maybe in a way that will help you engage the right people to ask the right questions. And so we'll try to simplify it to the best of our ability, but we know that these decisions are impactful to your business, and so we want to take that into consideration and be able to provide some services that are going to be of use to you.
Yep. Okay, well, with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to Dave Bailey or Andre Gonzalez. They're here to help. Okay, have a wonderful day, everyone.
Stay safe and healthy. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.